Welcome. Thank you for being here. It's quite an astounding thing, isn't it, to be this human being with this whole range of thoughts and emotions, and judgments and opinions and ideas and wants and desires and fears and doubts, like just the whole, I want to use the word Penelope. Is that a word? Sure. The whole range of this precious human experience. And yet the opportunity that we have is to be aware of the divine beingness within which, the unwavering divine beingness within which this human experience is unfolding. And it can be so easy to get lost in the experience. And everything our mind and our emotions and our DNA and our past lives and our ancestral lineage tells us about how we should feel and react, what we should be afraid of, and what is threatening. And what are the fears of love being taken away or being abandoned or being judged, unwanted, not belonging. And then all the dynamics of our modern world that tell us who we have to be and have been ever since I came into existence. The messaging that is so loud that says you need to be this and that and that and that, and then maybe then you'll be worthy. You'll be good enough. So we come together in satsang. Sat is truth. Song is sangha, togetherness. We come together in satsang to remember our grace, who we really are. And we're privileged to have this opportunity, not just in satsang, but to live the lives that we do. And to take advantage of this opportunity to wake up, to be conscious, to know ourselves. And the reason that I come to satsang in my studies and my devotions is because the dream of self that I had constructed and that the mind continues to try to construct is so thick. It's so dense. It's so convincing. It's the movie. Movies are awesome. Life is awesome. Our character of self, our stories, the roles we play. What a beautiful opportunity in play to learn and evolve and grow. But we get so involved in it that we forget that it is a temporary blip of time, not even time, but it's just the flavor of this now, the only now. And we get lost in the movie and we forget that it is unfolding within a divine consciousness of being. Just being. Being what? I'm trying to be this, I'm trying to be that. No, the being that you already are. And this can be such a foreign concept. That there's a beingness that exists. Language fails us, but a beingness that exists beyond our stories, our ideas, our constructs, our narrative. Beyond it, before it. Who are you before you came to believe yourself to be worthy, unworthy, lovable, not lovable? You know, before that story got a hold of you, before that dream really set in, who are you? That self beneath, if you will, the stories. And the self that we're speaking of is so close that all the words fail. It's not beyond the story. That's a distance. It's not underneath it. It is. It's just, it's the beingness. It's so close that whenever we seek for a sense of self through validation, relationship, love, connection, opportunity, experience, we're moving in the wrong direction. We're actually moving away from the very thing we're seeking. And we don't come to, often the fear is to come to know this self means, well, then why the hell would I do anything? For our soul to delight in this celebration of life, to explore, to learn pain, to learn grief, to learn to be with happiness, joy, exaltation, confusion, belief, the whole range of human experience. And to be able to not get lost in it. That's the freedom. So I come to Satsang because my story was so deeply troubling and painful and confusing of who I thought I was and needed to be. I remember I had a men's group. There were 10 of us. We'd gather at my house every month. Dear beloved brothers, and in men's group, really learning to trust, be vulnerable, be honest. And I remember sitting there so often listening to all of their stories about working with their businesses and managing their family dynamics and their relationships. And I didn't have a family, and I wasn't in a relationship. And I was still finding my way in my business, my dharma, my passion, my love. And I remember sitting and looking at all these beautiful men and feeling less than every single one of them. Because my story said, until you achieve this, you're wrong. You're not good enough. So to transcend that, I went through the long series of workshops and retreats, medicine journeys, and they were all valuable. But they were all valuable typically to help me understand my construct, understand my upbringing, my wounding, my pains, my stories. But I was spending so much time trying to rewrite my story and trying to think better of myself. And it turns out the mind won't behave. It's like, yeah, okay, we'll go with this story for a while until this other thing triggers you once again. And this narrative of yourself will appear again. Because the mind, everything that is created by the mind will be questioned by the same mind. It's never satisfied even with its own conclusions. it'll still harbor and repeat a doubt or a questioning or a, yeah, but really? Because now look at this evidence. And it just goes back to that database of learning and conditioning and programming. So I did that for a long time, and it was all valuable. But I realized it, and then I started to find teachers of non-duality, the oneness of being. And for the first time in my entire life, I found, wait a minute, there's a wait a minute, there's a self, there's a me. What do you mean that's already at peace? The hell it is. I've never experienced that. I don't know that. But something resonated, and I just stayed with it, stayed in the studies and the conversations. And none of it made sense initially, except for something inside that said something kind of makes sense. And then after a while, little by little, the enlightened, not I'm enlightened, but the enlightenment of our knowing, the awareness of our awareness that we are, the consciousness of the consciousness that we are, started to be more known, stable. And every single time I would find that truth, there would be peace. And finally, one day I just said, all right, this is the path. I'm devoted to honoring and knowing and awakening and discovering truth, whatever the heck that might be. And it keeps unfolding. It keeps unfolding. No matter how much I go, oh, God, all right. I think I got it. A week later, I'm going, oh. Because it's endless, it's boundless. So no matter what edge I'm at, no matter what edge we are at, there's always going to be, because we're at that edge, we can now see a little bit further. We can now experience a little bit further. And then we hit that sense where we've got a limited capacity to know true self. We'll never actually know the full self, the full true self in this life. But every time we expand, we're at a new edge and we can expand more. So that's why I share this, because it's my devotion, it's my dharma, and I found a way to hopefully find some language in it that resonates. So I mentioned earlier the fear of, then why would I do anything? We need to go to the extreme of putting down our stories long enough to find a stability of grace. And when I use the word grace, I just mean truth, the truth of our being, the divinity of our being. And when we find our grace, which is a stillness, it's an absolute stillness of allowing everything. There's nothing that it denies. There's nothing it is afraid of. There's nothing that it feels threatened by. It can feel everything. So we find that grace so that we can then come back into relationship with our lives, rested in truth, rested in that grace, to meet the disappointment, to meet the pain, to meet the grief, to meet the difficulty, to meet the challenge, to meet the exaltation of something in our lives and not cling to it. Not think, oh, that we've got to hold that all the time, because that's just another trap. So to be able, we find that grace of being so that we can just be as life unfolds. Ram Dass called it unconditional loving awareness. Unconditional. Yeah, but what about, no, that's conditional. It's under these conditions, sure. But what about that? No, unconditional loving awareness. And an analogy we often use is the sky and the weather. The sky is always present and it's unconditional. It doesn't argue with or resist or fight or fear any weather pattern that comes and goes. They all come and go. We've had cyclonic weather here in Bali. And no matter how torrential and tumultuous it is, the first moment we get a little glimpse of blue sky, we're not looking up at a damaged sky needing to repair. We're looking up at a sky that's been at peace the entire time. So our practices, our studies, our letting go, our surrender scares the hell out of the ego body that says, yeah, but I'm addicted to being fed by activity and relationships and validation and pursuing this. And if you find your truth, you're no longer going to do that. It's like, no, we're still going to have our desires and interests and curiosities and experiences. It's just that we're not going to have the attachment any longer to them being responsible for our peace. And so when we talk about the being so close, one invitation is to stop all seeking and learn the being that already is. So the seeking actually kind of gets in the way of the knowing of the being. It's so simple. Where are you going? What are you looking for? And the invitation is to stop. Yeah, but I'm not there yet. No, you are. It's always there. It's never not there. That's the conundrum. I'm not there yet. And it takes some faith and trust and surrender. Julia and I were talking about this yesterday. It's quite understandable to say, I don't know it yet because I have not had the direct experience. This thing we're speaking of, I don't think I've experienced it. So how can I know it's true? And that's where the faith comes in. At some point, you just kind of listen to what we're speaking of and say, you know what? It just makes sense. That all these thoughts come and go. They're like the weather patterns. They're like the movie playing out on the movie screen. And the movie screen never changes, no matter how much the movie changes. What is the movie screenness of my being? What is the skyness of my being? It must be there. It just makes sense. So the faith leads more to the experience than saying only when I have the experience will I then have trust and faith. It's not how faith works. Kind of the opposite of faith. So this is just a little preamble, little introduction to help us be with the moment. Arouse our curiosity, our self-inquiry. Meditation is an interruption of the habitual activity of mind and an intentional and activating an intentional activity of mind, or at least that's what meditation can be. There's many forms of meditation, but meditation doesn't have to be just pure quiet. Meditation is often active, asking questions. Who am I? Wait a minute. All these thoughts come and go, all these beliefs come and go, all these emotions come and go. What doesn't come and go? What is that? So we want to, the invitation here as well is to, if we're interested in knowing the freedom that we already are, to have some level of devotion to making conscious exploration of our lives a real focus, a real center point of our lives. I personally don't know any greater path of liberation and freedom than know thyself. And by know thyself, I mean to know, to start to know, to get the first glimmers that turn into a little bit more of a flame, a little bit more of a sustained light, to know our divine grace of being, to allow it to blossom, from an unknown seedling into a full, continuous, lifelong blossoming, to know that self, the divine grace of our being, and to know our conditioning, to know our programming, to know our wounding, to know our stories, to know our beliefs that veil the knowing of that true self. That's true self-knowing. And what a beautiful thing to make a life as a center point of this life, to know thyself. What is this burgeoning, blossoming grace of being? And what are all the ways that I get in the way of it? Oh, look at my mind. Oh, there's my shit again. Oh, there I go. To know. That's to be curious. And to drop the shame around it. That's what society so much has instilled within us. The shame of not knowing. The shame of getting it wrong. The shame of not being there yet. And the ignorance of the ignoring of the divinity of our oneness, and not to celebrate that and honor that and love that. Because when we awaken as the soul that we are, we stop seeing just people, difficult people, troublesome people, desired people. People can give us something, people who were enemies. That's all still kind of the dynamic playing out, but we see beyond that. And when we know ourselves as soul, we just start to see soul. And we can still see soul deeply veiled by the ego story that we don't want to be with and isn't pleasing to be with, and set boundaries. But to know thyself is the freedom to know the truth of our being and the ways we get lost from it. What a beautiful thing. And to use every opportunity. Ram Dass taught beautifully. There's nothing on your plate that isn't the stuff of your enlightenment. Not a thing. Everything is there to show you your ignorance or to show you your divinity. And all the shades in between. But if we're not using that opportunity and we're just caught in the egoic drive for validation and love and attachment and being nourished and fed all the things that we think we need to feel whole, then we're stuck in that loop. We're just stuck in that world of, they call it the hungry ghost. no matter how much it eats, it's never satisfied. And we all, we're all of an age. We can certainly recognize how much that doesn't work. And the world isn't stable, and the mind isn't stable, and if we're trying to rely on people and life and things and conditions and relationships and all of that to stabilize in a satisfactory and pleasing way, so that then I'll be happy. And if it starts to fall apart, then I'm not happy, and I've got to struggle again to get it to behave again. My God, that's exhausting. So I'm curious, what arises, what curiosity, question, knowing arises within us when we speak of these things, and when we point our awareness to an essential nature of being that is typically clouded by all of our noise, by all of our stories. I'm going to check my chats here on this. Lots of chats here on YouTube. T. Marie, I think that's my friend Tina Marie in Sedona, I believe. Awareness, it keeps getting better, deeper. It keeps getting deeper. Just be aware, watch. Okay, not interactive. She said not interactive. Oh, Tina, it was getting there. What doesn't come and go? This is the question. That's by R. Henry. What doesn't come and go? This is the question. Inquiry, just inquiring in these questions that most people never ask. Go through their entire lives, never ask. Just try to get it all to stabilize. So what comes up? What's of interest? What's nourishing? What's confusing? We often look at what's the edge we're hitting. It's like, okay, yeah, I got that. Yeah, but then we get here, and this starts to get a little wonky or difficult or uncertain.
I have a question, it's a bit specific.
Yeah.
It comes from what we were talking about.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Because we were talking about this experiences that we've had as children that are stored in our psyche and also stored in our body.
Mm-hmm.
And if it comes to clearing that, we can do our healing work, but where actually this, let's say, all of them, but especially not positive experiences are stored, because are they really in the mind or are they actually in your body?
Both.
So if we work with them, we also need to address the body. Is that right? I mean, body is a vessel that holds the information.
The body is often our experience of the mind. The mind will store in the body memories, reactive trigger points, just waiting for a similar experience. We experience a wounding when we're young, we don't ever want to experience again. So our body gets tuned to being on watch to make sure that never happens again. We're protected. There's all manner of modalities. There's all manner of beautiful modalities. whether it be breath work, ecstatic dance, Sufi dancing, and then the internal family systems. There's all psychedelic medicines. There's all that help rewire and help us open up and activate different parts of the brain that have gotten calcified and solidified. There's all manner of modalities. So to address the body is important. Yeah. If there's calling, to say, there's meditation, there's Kundalini meditation and shaking, moving the energy. Absolutely. What's helpful, I want to say what's often missing, but what's helpful is to know that as we are working with the limitations, with the stored memories, thoughts, beliefs, feelings, that we're not depending on them to clear or to be let go in order to know our freedom. It can seem so paradoxical. You can see, no, this is what's getting in the way of my freedom. It's an inner, we were listening to Gangaji yesterday, and she speaks about the presence of being, which is even undisturbed by our own feelings of trauma and difficulty and uncertainty. We think those need to go away before we can be free. We are never not free. So it's important, I think, to not believe, let's say, that all we need to know is to know the grace of our being and all will be resolved. But also on the other side of the spectrum, not to believe that all we need to do is clear the mind and the body of the pains and traumas and triggers and energies. Because we will often create new ones. Or again, we'll do that clearing, but then unless it's absolutely complete, there's still a kernel, a seed that's there, like ready to infect again. It's like clearing an infection. If you don't clear the whole thing absolutely out, it's going to start to build again and recreate again and start to create that old construct to some degree. I mean, we do let things go and do a lot of healing that are gone. But man, we are in this limited human experience with an egoic construct, an egoic sense of self. An ego is not a thing. It's an activity of mind. And that's not going to stop. So to find that grace that can be with, oh, here's another round, here's another showing, here's another appearance, here's another appearance of anything. An appearance of happiness, an appearance of bliss, an appearance of clinging, an appearance of pain, an appearance of fear, an appearance of doubt. To find the grace of being that is unwavering allows us then to do the work and be ready for when more work needs to be done. And to do the work as our beingness attending to the child, to the pain. It's waking up the divine parent within each of us so that as our work appears to be acknowledged and loved and healed by that love, that we can give it genuine love because we've awakened genuine love. So it's not either or, it's both. To try to be a bliss bunny is probably to ignore the pain that's going to say, yeah, you just wait till you let your guard down. But to be working in our pain and only in our pain without the knowing of our divinity is like a wounded child and a little bit less wounded child trying to heal that wounded child. We've got to bring some pure love into the equation, because that's what does the healing. And it's difficult because the pain says, I can't wait for that. I want this all to go away. I want it all to correct. It's kind of like climbing a mountain. If you look at the summit and you say, that's really where I want to be. And that won't be the summit. There'll be, once you're there, you'll see another summit. But to look at summits and say, I want to be there, and this path looks like it takes too long, I should go find another path. How are you going to get to the summit unless we're patient with the steps along the way and learn to love the pain? Because the pain is showing us where we are lost in our story. Again, Ram Dass, one of my most beloved teachers, after he had his stroke, well, before, but after it was really poignant, he would say, I love my pain. I love my wheelchair. I love it all. Because from the perspective of our divine oneness, our grace, the love that we are, it doesn't say, I love this, but not that. I'm not the body. I'm not the mind. I'm not this human experience. I am the one having the human experience. But the human experience hurts. If we can pull out and be and live and love from the perspective of our boundless nature of being, then there isn't only the hurt. There's the hurt and there's the love of the hurt. But to be identified only as the hurt puts us in that trap of, I need to make it go away, and then I need to keep it away. And anytime it starts to arrive again, I start to get lost again in panic. Learning to be the loving parent of our own child so that we're stable, so that whenever the child needs love and healing and attention and grace, that we have it. I don't know, this idea just came up, the Peter Pan, the island of lost boys. They needed a mother. They needed somebody to be the love that they didn't know how to give to themselves. Because young boys are full of ego, trying to be better and win, dominate. Is that helpful? Or what does that bring up for you? This idea of, do that work and do the studies and devotions and practices of awakening a you that is already beyond the pain.
It comes up when you talk about the pain. Is here the word is something else than to have own experience, yes. And I think we're all the same. I mean, we're going through the same experiences, they're just different, but still the same. And what comes to me is that when pain comes, and you say yourself, love that pain, how to really relax into that feeling, because you have also experience, just like to relax into that and accept that.
Yes, is to know the one that is already relaxed, and that takes time. And I get that phrase made no sense to me. Love the pain. Why in the hell would I love the, like, that's just stupid. I don't love the pain. I don't love the pain because I didn't have any knowing. I didn't have any practice of knowing the love that can love pain. So it's a practice, and it's like a threshold. It's a tough one to get over, but at some point we start to attend to our studies and our practices and our conversations to awaken that seems like a fantasy to us. We're living our lives upside down. We believe ourselves to be that which is construct of the mind, and we believe that the actual divine grace of our being is some fantastical thing that we question and we doubt and we wonder if it's even really real. So the inquiries are helpful. Is there a you that exists between stories, between pains, between thoughts? Is there a you? Is there something? Is there something that doesn't move? Like the sky doesn't move, the weather moves. The movie screen doesn't move, the movie moves. Is there something in us that is that stable? And we can answer, yeah, maybe, but I've never experienced it. No. So we were talking about this yesterday. You imagine it. We imagine our stories. We imagine all of our insults to our ego. We imagine our ego. We imagine ourselves. So why not imagine truth? See what happens. And keep imagining it, and keep imagining. What if? What if? What if? What if there is? My thoughts come and go. My emotions come and go. Nothing I've ever experienced in my life has been consistent. Except one thing. The awareness of all of it. And then we start to inquire, what is the nature of that awareness? Stillness. Peace. The depth of the pond, so that even when rocks get thrown in the pond and the pond ripples, that when those subside, that stillness of the pond down below was actually never disturbed. It was only up at the surface. The disturbance happened. And what we're often trying to do is we're trying to smooth out the ripples with our mind. And it's like literally taking your hands on a rippled pond and trying to smooth out the ripples and going, why won't they go away? Why won't this pond get still again? I'm pushing all the ripples away. I'm pushing them away. I'm pushing them away. I'm trying to smooth them out. Why won't they smooth out? Stop. sink down into the ever widening circles of being. So to truly self-love, to love our wounding, to love our fears, to love the damaged parts of our psyche, the veiling, the hurt, to love it truly is not an activity of mind. It is the resting in the love, awakening, allowing the love to be present. And being more interested in the awareness of the pain than the pain itself. Just 51%, just that tipping point. Be slightly more interested in the unwavering awareness of what is coming and going than you are with all the coming and going. Be slightly more interested in the stillness of being than the activity that is moving through the stillness of being. Does that move things a little bit? Yeah. We are not our thoughts. We're not who we think we are. We're just not. And never will be. We'll never be who we think we are. We may have thoughts about ourselves that are true, but they're still thoughts. And those thoughts will end someday. And the essential nature of our being will remain. So practice, meditation, journaling, conversations, satsang, study, to make the knowing of ourself, our divine nature, to start to awaken to that, and to know all the ways that we get in the way, and to start to learn how to navigate our human experience from a place of love. From and as who we really are. And that's why the central question, who am I, really? Really and truly. The me that never changes. And to recognize and to be okay with the initially going, the me that never changes, I've never experienced. I have no direct experience with that. I've always been a me that is constantly changing. So curiosity and imagination. Is there a me that doesn't change? And if so, what would the nature of that be? Could the reality of me really be stillness? The stillness that does not get bothered by activity. The sky that doesn't get bothered by weather. If I ring this bowl, let's say everything's perfectly silent. The silence hasn't gone away. Language is tricky. The sound of the bowl is temporarily filling the silence, temporarily occupying, appearing, is the way to put it. The sound of the bowl is temporarily appearing within the silence. We get so enamored with the sound of the bowl, that's all we're attentive to. Here's something to ponder. Can you see the light in this room? When I was first asked that question, I said, well, yeah. And my teacher asked me again, really? You can see the light in the room? And I realized that the light is lighting this up, but between there, the source and the object, I can't see the light. So I ignore it. I never attend to it. I never think about it. I never bring any awareness to it. I'm so focused on the objects that I forget the essence within which all objects are known, the light. I'm so focused on the experience and the sound and the activity and the pain and the stories that I forget the essence of consciousness within which it's all appearing. We get enamored with the feelings and the emotions and the thoughts and the beliefs. And we overlook the fact that they're happening within a stillness of consciousness. The stillness and peace of being is ever present, even if you never knew it for 1 second of this entire life. Even if your entire life was and you never turned your attention to asking, what is this space that sound is appearing in? What is the stillness of my being within which my human experience is unfolding, within which my stories and pains and feelings and thoughts and beliefs are appearing? What is the fabric of this reality of being? And even when the sound, even when the disturbance or the activity of mind, of story is happening, can I be 51% more interested in remembering that it is happening within something? An embrace, if you will. A meditative technique, opportunity, is when you sit to initially start with, no matter what is appearing within this body, mind, ego experience, whether I'm feeling anxious, disturbed, angry, sad, confused, upset, no matter what is happening within this body, mind, ego experience, it is all temporary and happening within the embrace of loving awareness. And that is what I truly am. Witnessing, watching, experiencing the temporary movement of body, mind, and ego. It's a wonderful thing. I did that for, I don't know, years. Every meditation, I would sit down. The first thing I would do is saying, all right, here I go. And no matter what's going on in here, it's happening. All this activity is happening within a stillness of being. And I am that. And I'm going to be in meditation. I'm going to be curious about that. Here's another technique, usually best coming out of a meditation. But you can do it anytime, really. Look around the room and notice things. And there's a good chance that the mind is naming things. Lamp, camera, light. Oh, it's a beautiful light. Oh, it's a stained glass lamp. Oh, that's pretty. Oh, look at that. It's an altar. Huh, wonder what that, we're just thinking about things. Conjuring ideas, thoughts, making up stuff. The technique, technique is, what if you could let your gaze land on things and don't tell any story about it. Don't name it. Don't have a thought about it. What if I were to just be in the world of activity and objects and things and start to train myself to not instinctively, habitually, compulsively have a thought about it? Because that's what the ego mind does constantly. What do I think about that? What do I think about that? Is that valuable to me? No, that's not a threat. Okay, that's okay. What about that? Oh, that's nice. Oh, maybe I want more of that. Oh, maybe I want less of that. Maybe I got to keep that away, and I got to make this happen, and I got to fix this. And the mind is constantly, the ego is constantly assessing and fixing and adjusting the world because it doesn't feel whole. It doesn't know wholeness. It's always seeking. It doesn't know it, but it's always seeking the true self. So it's trying to recreate that in the experiences and the relationships and the situations of the world. And so it's a great practice to come out of a meditation, especially, and just say, okay, when I open my eyes, I'm going to be in this world. I'm not going to name anything. And to realize you don't need to. And in fact, when you don't name things, the attention starts to turn back to the being. Because it's not being absorbed. The attention isn't being totally captivated by the narrating and the storytelling and the assessing and the judging and the opinionating and the fixing and the doing. Just stop. Stop all naming, assessing, figuring out. Just even for a moment, and then maybe for a day. Yeah, that's a tough one. Little moments, just start to train ourselves to be better. And after a while, you just start to walk through your life at peace. Because you've realized, I don't need to name everything. I don't need to assess everything because I'm already safe. I'm already whole. I'm already complete. I need nothing, truly. Now, I want to play in this world. I want to play with things. I want to play with love. I want to play with belonging. I want to play with success. I want to play with all of this. And I want to make it as good as I can, as beautiful as I can. But I don't need to be so afraid of not working it all out that if I don't, I'll be empty or unfulfilled. So we train ourselves just to not stop naming everything, stop telling stories about everything, so we can just turn our attention back to the being. It doesn't need to be vigilant constantly, trying to get and trying to resist. Gangaji teaches about an active mind is a mind that is either seeking, resisting, or clinging. I seek because I don't feel whole, so I need to create in order to feel happiness, feel peace, feel belonging, feel love. I'm sourcing it from outside, so I'm seeking. Or I'm resisting. Oh, there's that difficult emotion and that pain within and this situation that's happening. I don't want it to happen, so resisting. Or clinging. And clinging is it's maybe the most difficult one of all. That's exhausting. Great, I got the people in my life behaving just right. My partner's loving me just the right way I need to be loved, and the situation, the money's coming in the way I need it to come in, and the success is happening the way I want it to happen, and the goodies are appearing, and I've got it all beautiful and fantastic, and all right, now I can relax. No, now I've got to keep it, maintain it, make sure it doesn't get taken away, make sure it doesn't burn down, and make sure it doesn't, dissolve. And when I realized, oh my God, I've created a prison of happiness. So we talk about these things simply because something might land, some little seed, some little something that says, yes, for where I am currently in my exploration of knowing myself, this is a helpful shift in perspective and attendance to my life. To what am I attending? Who's in charge? Who's asking the questions? Who's upset? What is seeking? What is clinging? Where am I clinging? Why am I clinging? What is to know, to explore these things peacefully. Yeah. So, here's Mike online. Hey, Mike, good to see you here. Mike's a part of the Oasis community here. For me, the work is all there is. Everything stems from it. Yeah. It's interesting. We call it work, isn't it? It's a tough one. It's attending to waking up. Attending to our self-knowing is maybe a better way to put it. Attending to our self-knowing. So we're trying to do. We're trying to know truth and trying to get out from under the stuff that weighs all the truth down, that veils it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's so contradictory in terms of understanding that all of that is play and to stop, but at the same time to live and play this life, because the desire takes you in the middle of that.
The desire takes you in the middle of the play of life. Yeah.
And I was doing a lot of Buddhist meditation, and it's still, now when I'm in the middle of my cycle of life, the finding the balance of not clinging to reality, especially when things are not easy.
Yeah.
Is the hardest.
For who?
For me.
For the ego. Are you the ego?
It's
Possibly
it's
not.
part of the construct.
It is a part of the construct, but a dream, you fall asleep at night and you have a dream, and it seems so real. You're being chased by a tiger. As long as you're in the dream and identified with the dream and don't know the actual self having the dream, all there is the dream. And the dream is scary as hell. And then you wake up and you realize, wow, no tiger. What we're doing here is we're appearing in within the dream, talking about the fact that we're in a dream, and basically poking the one being chased by the tiger and saying, you know, tiger's not really real. You're making up tiger. Like the hell I am. I've been running from this thing for and look, it's scary as hell. And if one would actually stop in the dream long enough and let the tiger attack them, they'd realize there was nothing there to attack. The divinity cannot be destroyed or altered. There was I've never been into slasher flicks, but I think it's either Freddy Krueger or Halloween, something. I think it's Freddy Krueger. He plays a character that appears in kids' dreams. And, you know, he's killing and he's attacking and he's hurting and he's maiming and all this incredible terror. Until toward the end of the movie, kids start to realize, wait a minute, you're a construct of my dream. Therefore, you're not real. Therefore, if I simply stop believing in you, you can't hurt me. And he loses all of his power. He can't hurt them anymore. He could only hurt them as long as they believed he was real. What if there's a you that's already free and forever divine and whole and at peace? Imagine that. And again, the only reason I get so excited about this is because it's the only thing that saved my ass. It was the only thing that finally helped me know the divine grace of being that I always have been, always will be. No matter, I could spend an entire life in dream, and it doesn't change the reality of my essential nature. And a minister in I think it was a Unitarian church one time, said something that changed my life. she was a guest minister, and there was that, I showed up at church and there was that moment of being disappointed because I really liked the minister, David, and he wasn't there. I was like, oh, we got a substitute teacher, you know. Well, it turns out she's the one who said something that changed my life. And she said, when we are disconnected from our divinity, we will feel not enough. When we're disconnected from our essential wholeness and the knowing and abidance of that wholeness, the faith in that wholeness, the abidance of that wholeness, the acceptance of that wholeness. If we don't abide our wholeness, we will feel not enough. And then not enoughness will then try to fulfill that sense of lack or emptiness and disconnect with relationships and activities and dynamics of life. So to come back to part of your question, which was, which was around desire to be in the play. We start to recognize that part of the conundrum is that soul has desire and so does ego. They're just sourced differently. One soul, my soul desires to live in a place like this. It really feeds my soul to live in a place that has vistas and views and spaciousness and quiet. Another soul would be here going, I mean, this is cool and a great place to vacation, man, but I would go crazy living here. I want to live in a city. I want to go to plays. I want to be active. I want to go to clubs. I want to, another soul says, I build skyscrapers and that's how love moves through me. And another soul says, yeah, I teach children and that's how love moves through me. So soul has desires and inclinations and motivations. But then so does the ego. But the ego has them because it is trying to fulfill a sense of emptiness. It's trying to fulfill a sense of not being enough. It tries to be better so that it can finally be loved and accepted and mitigate the threat of abandonment and betrayal. The ego desires all manner of things because it believes that the things deliver the happiness.
So how did you differentiate that?
Practice, study, starting to know, starting to have some experience, even though it initially shows up as just a little momentary spark of peace. And we try to grab hold of it. The ego tries to grab hold of it. Ooh, that's what I'm looking for. And then it goes away. But to allow that burgeoning, that blossoming, that awakening to move from a spark to an ember, keep blowing on the ember. Stop blowing on the ember, it's going to die out. Activate the spark, activate the spark, activate the spark, blow on it, turns it into an ember, blow on that, turns into a flame, feed the flame with more inquiry, more truth, more 51% interest in the essential nature of being or the stillness of being, than all the activity. To remember these things, to go through our days thinking about it. What's really happening? Who am I really? What's the nature of reality? So to differentiate between the ego desire and the soul desire, it's the soul desire it goes, yeah, I want this and I'm going to strive for this. And if it doesn't happen, I'm still okay. The ego desire says, I want this, I need this, I'm attached to it, and if it doesn't happen, I suffer. That's probably the biggest differentiation, is when this ego doesn't get its desires, there tends to be suffering. When the soul doesn't necessarily get its desires, it just stays in its devotion and keeps working toward it. says, I'm just a beautiful soul trying to find resonance in this world. And I'm going to be with peace with whatever occurs. The Tibetan monks in China, or in Tibet, the Tibetan monks, when China invaded and took a lot of the monks and put them in prison and burned their monasteries, said, we're putting you in prison. And they said, no, you're not. The Chinese said, are you delusional? Here you go. 4 walls and bars, and you are now in prison. And the monks went, no, I'm not. You don't have that power. You can't change my circumstances and think that you're going to take away from me life, aliveness, love, connection, divinity. You can never take my divinity. It's impossible. Put a gun to my head and pull the trigger. You still haven't taken away my divinity. We start to learn to take life in through our peace, the burgeoning blossoming of peace that we slowly come to know as ourselves. We start to bring life in through that burgeoning peace, that grace. That's why we practice being slightly more interested in the grace than all the activity within the grace. And as that grace is known, it is that grace that is experiencing life, no longer so veiled by the conditioning and programming. Most of us are taking in life, and every experience is being fed into a database. How should I feel about this moment? Well, I don't know. It feels a lot like that betrayal I experienced when I was young, and it feels like it's a lack, and it's all gonna go away. And we're just feeding it into a database of conditioning. It's been conditioned by a profoundly sick society. Krishnamurti says it is no measure of one's well-being to be well-adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Right? It's no measure of our peace to belong in a world that demands that we have to be a certain way in order to belong. And I finally belong. Groucho Marx, right? I wouldn't want to be in any club that accepted me, something of that nature, right? To say, I finally belong in the society that demands that I jump through the hoops and play all these roles and be a certain way in order to be loved. I want to belong in a world where I'm loved because I am loved, regardless of how fucked up I might be and how wrong I might move and how, I'm done with shame. It has no value. I belong to myself. Love belongs to itself. And that's freedom. Then nobody, somebody can say, I'm taking love away. It's like the monk saying, we're putting you in prison. No, you're not. I'm taking love away from you. Like, well, that's kind of crazy. You really think you can do that? You may be taking your love away from me, but you're not taking love away from me. I source that because I now know myself to be love. And it's daunting and it takes a while and the summit seems really far away at times. But what are you going to do? So any other thoughts, questions? your own insights, your own knowings, revelations. While you think about that, I'm going to look here. Yeah, there we go. And we're coming up on our hour and a half here, so any shares? And there doesn't have to be. I'm called to share this one. Okay, two things. The ego panics because it's the only source of decision making typically that we've ever used. And it says, how will I live this life if I'm not trying to get all the goodies? Because it's so addicted to them, it thinks that that's the only way you can be happy, fulfilled. How will I live this life? Rested in peace, not seeking, not striving so fervently. And the best answer I've been able to come up with that has kind of come through is, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like in every moment. Nobody can really know that, but I guarantee it's going to be more authentic than you've ever lived before. Because you're not going to be attending to everything from a false self, from an illusion of self, a construct of self, layered with beliefs and stories and conditioning and programming. And we start to hear, whether we want to call it angels, guides, God, our own higher consciousness, intuition, we start to be able to hear a guidance that is other than the fearful ego. We give it space to appear, to show up. We start to hear the song of our own soul. Cahill Gibran says that our work is our love made visible. How can we even know what that love really is? Genuine. Not I need to do this so that I can be successful or loved or validated or belong, but just an authentic love. So it takes some doing to sit with the freaked out ego, the arguing ego. Yeah. I've got a whole section of that in the course, the Living Beyond the Noise course, around meeting the ego's copious resistances and stories and directives. So that's part of knowing thyself. How's my ego fight back? And ego attacks and stories, narratives. And the other thing, I'll end with this, is Rupert Spira is one of my most resonant teachers. And he has this beautiful teaching that says allowing the weather, the sky allows the weather, right? The screen allows the movie. Allowing in our lives of everything that might appear in our life is not an activity of mind. It's not a choice of the mind. Because the mind's going to struggle with that choice. Really? But what are the consequences of allowing? And then what if? And then what? It's going to take you down all sorts of rabbit holes. Allowing, true allowing is not activity of mind. True allowing is the very nature of our being. It is the nature of our stillness. It is the nature of our peace. True allowing is the nature of our being. It doesn't mean that we then don't still make decisions. Yes to that, no to that, set boundaries, strive for this. He said that as I'm striving for that, I'm allowing everything that's going to come along the way. I'm going to allow that as I strive for that, my old unhealed wound of fear of being abandoned if I make a mistake is going to appear. And I'm going to allow that. And go, oh, wow. Yeah, there's that old, there it is, that old storyline that says if I am inadequate in any way, if I fail in any way, love will be withdrawn. And then to rest in my being and go, love will be withdrawn. Okay. Love can never be taken from me. So I allow for my fear to arise. I allow for my conditioning, my story, my doubt, my pain, my suffering. I allow it. I, the true I. It's not an activity of chess. It's not an activity of this character. It's the rested grace of being that is always allowing, just as the weather, the sky allows all the weather. And I don't know a greater freedom. Than seeking what you want to seek and setting boundaries around what doesn't feel good, what doesn't feel resonant, what doesn't feel healthy and nourishing. And then to allow everything that occurs along the way. Keep making choices, keep striving, keep playing, keep playing as big as you want to play, and then accept or allow everything that appears along the way. And make choices to mitigate those things, but not to mitigate them to come back to peace. Simply to mitigate them because they don't feel resonant with the peace that you already are. So let's finish up today with just 2 minutes of being at rest, just with whatever feels alive within you. And the being with whatever is moving within your body and mind or story. There is an unwavering grace of being. That whether it is known or not is ever present. And it allows the full experience of our thoughts and emotions, feelings. And it is the abidance of our divine being that allows for the full human experience. And until maybe we have a more direct experience of that being, we imagine it. We imagine the stillness, the embrace of stillness and peace within which everything else comes and goes and is born and dies and appears and disappears within the grace and stillness and peace and love that we already are, that is the essence of our being. I am that. Blessings. May we all remember our oneness. And then forget it, and then remember it, and then forget it, remember it, until it's remembered enough that it just stays in the background of all experience. Beautiful.